We're live now.
Yeah, we are live now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Trump Tyranny Tracker for day 319. We're trying out the new Substack desktop camera equipment thingy here. So I hope it works. We're glad to be able to see everyone join in. We can get to see the chat more directly here. It's great to see everybody. In about 20 minutes, Professor Terence Goggin will be here to talk about the day for Pete Hegseth, how it's gone. Not a very good day for Pete Hegseth. But right now, the lovely Olga Laufman is here. Hey, Olga, how are you?
I am good. Good. How are you?
I'm good. It has not been a good day for Terence Goggin at all. I'm sorry, for
no,
Hegseth
for
at
him it
all.
has been.
Yeah.
For Pete, not so much.
Absolutely. This administration is floundering from one crisis to the next. But I did want to get your take on what happened out of Ukraine. I mean, nothing really happened out of Ukraine. And the conversations between Putin and Witkoff and Putin and Jared Kushner. This was just a waste of time, wasn't it? Just another 5-hour delay with some business deal on the side.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Look, I mean, I think when we started this in February, everybody got hyped up over like the various plans that Trump was putting out. It was telling everyone like, take a breather, relax. We've gone through it already 5 times. The media makes a spectacle of it every single time that there's a meeting. They're like, this is it. There's a peace plan. I mean, you would think American media would say the peace plan can happen if Russia leaves. But no, for some reason, they buy, the BS narrative. But as we see since February, and I'm sure we could talk in February again and in September again, this is not going anywhere. What is 2 things I'll note. One, that every time Trump does this, and this was like the 5th time he tried to force Ukraine to surrender, every time he does it, it weakens our transatlantic alliances. And we've seen this happening in August. We are seeing it now. And I mean, pretty much after Trump threw Zelensky out of the Oval Office. So, yes, it's a win for Moscow there. The other thing I'll note, this particular trip was very interesting because, one, Putin kept Witkoff and Kushner waiting. And it was fascinating. Not only did he keep them waiting, and he's notorious for that. It's, one of those male things to show dominance in his head. But not only did he keep them waiting, he made sure to attend a live event to make sure that they know that he's at some BS conference that's like irrelevant to anything. And that's it. And the second thing I'll note, several hours after the meeting, this is fascinating. I think I should write about it because no one in American media even picked up on this. It wasn't even like 8 hours after the meeting. Suddenly, Russia yanked out one of the hostages that they have, American hostages, I believe a Marine. And suddenly decided to put new charges against him. And now he's facing 10 years in penal colony. I think it was 8 years. They said that he attempted to assault someone in one of the, guards at the penal colony. The fact they did this is such a humiliation to the U.S. The fact that, right as Witkoff and Kushner are leaving, they dangle this, U.S. former Marine to say, look, we're going to throw him into the penal. I mean, we'll keep him, extend his term in the penal colony. So.
It is a big story, actually. I'm surprised no one's picked up on it. You're the first person who's telling me about it. And
nobody would. It's all over Russian media since that day, but no one here
because it really is for local consumption. And even this kind of stuff he does for domestic consumption and makes him look so much stronger internally, like he's got something over the Americans. But in reality, he is not as strong as he's pretending to be. His economy is struggling. He's not doing very well at the war with Ukraine. And his world standing is really not anything to be proud of right now.
But that's been the case since, he came to power.
Yeah,
He came to
shtick.
power basically blowing up apartment buildings. It was European and U.S. intelligence agencies who knew that he ordered, the killing of more than 300 Russians to get into power, who decided, you know what, we want to make sure to do business with Russia and have good relations with Russia. And they, put up this facade that he was an anti-corruption, figure who was going to change Russia. They knew who he was. Our intelligence agencies knew who he was. It was a complete betrayal, not only at the time to the Russian people, but then as we see to the rest of the world, because really Russia, he's not powerful, but Russia has no lines they won't cross. It's not like
Exactly.
the KGB that actually followed, protocol and had certain red lines. These security services are reckless, they're dangerous. I mean, I'd be more concerned, that they end up, and the military, launching a nuclear weapon, not because they intended to, but because by accident someone's drunk and undisciplined and fell onto the button. So this is the problem here, that these people are very erratic, the new generation.
Yeah, absolutely,
And
and
that's
connected to the mob in big ways, obviously, and have a big global network in that way. Let's do the Trump Tyranny Tracker for today. There are five big stories here today, and we begin with this one. The White House has rolled out a media bias portal, urging the public to report allegedly biased news stories about Trump. They published a searchable database like that names individual reporters and labels outlets like CBS, CNN, and the Washington Post as repeat offenders. I thought we did the story the other day.
we did, but what is new, they added now a tip line.
Oh, okay.
So the fact that they already have this portal set up, but they added a tip line. And I mean, this automatically made me think of Russia, because in Russia, I mean, they're the ones who compile list of everything and have people snitching on each other. It's a culture, I mean, for centuries. Um, and the fact here that here they, basically want to put a target on journalists. And on top of it, they're using these tip lines to basically intimidate journalists,
Yeah.
individual journalists.
And create a list probably as well.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we could all flood that tip line with real complaints about bias and reporting, about the right wing and the extremist influences that they have online, pulling the same kind of stuff. Do you think they'll buy into any of that if we flood that line?
No, but it'll be fun. Let them weed
Yeah,
through for one
yeah,
actual tip about their freaking BS. They'll have
yeah.
to go through 100 on Breitbart and Gateway Pundit and
Yeah,
the
we should put
rest
out
of
that
them.
number. Make sure everyone calls it regularly. It may kill the program quite quickly. The next story on the Trump Tyranny Tracker today. Just struggling to get it to here. Where is it? There we go. Trump announced he is terminating all pardons, commutations, and legal documents that Joe. This just reset on me. So let me read it here. I don't know what's going on. I think it's all the hearts that people are giving us. It's slowing down my system here. But keep doing them. Keep giving us the hearts. So Trump announced he's terminating all pardons, commutations, and legal documents that Joe Biden allegedly signed with an auto pen. Legal scholars say that this is unprecedented. Presidents of both parties have long used the device, and the Constitution does not require handwritten signatures. Of course, they didn't have auto pens back then. A president has no authority to nullify a predecessor's pardons, full stop. But Trump is again asserting sweeping powers and daring the courts to stop him. This is a direct attack on the separation of powers and also just the respect between presidents. It's insane.
All of the above.
Yes.
I mean, here, it is. I read it yesterday. I'm like, of course he would. He can go and pardon everyone, and frankly, sell pardons because let's not be fooled. All these people who are being pardoned are because they probably paid a few $1 million, and bought their pardon.
Yeah.
But here, not only is he selling pardons, but now he wants to basically erase all the pardons that Joe Biden did. I mean, it really, what he has in his head floating, I'd love to know because
Not
he
very
really.
much. I think it's pretty empty up there. But maybe he thinks it's a business opportunity. Maybe he's missing out on some money back there, and he thinks he should go back and collect some money on these pardons because he didn't get his take that last time around. This is he's become so immoral and so unethical and selling every piece of the presidency left, right, and center.
Yeah, it definitely is immoral and unethical. And again, it's unconstitutional. There's
Yeah.
no president who can walk in and say, you know what, I didn't like my predecessor's pardons. So therefore, they are null and void. That's not how pardons work. I wish they did.
I
But
don't think he knows the Constitution. I think he should have read it before becoming president again. He's really missing out
nah,
on some
he was
important
too
details.
busy reading, Hitler's book that he kept in his nightstand. So no, no, not our Constitution, at least. I don't think he's ever read.
Absolutely. The next story is here. I guess again, it's not there. Is Pete Hegseth forced out Admiral Alvin Halsey, the four-star commander overseeing Trump's Caribbean strike campaign, after months of tension over leaks, rushed war planning demands, and Halsey's early warnings about the shaky legal basis for lethal boat strikes. This is a big story that came out of the Wall Street Journal today. It's really stunning that this man who publicly said he was stepping down, retiring, was actually pushed out by Hegseth, who's just, an impossibly incapable Secretary of War or Defense Secretary. And in this circumstance, he told him that you basically have to follow the orders regardless, otherwise you're out. This is, again, speaking of unconstitutional, it's also against international law.
Yeah, 100%. And what's interesting, we knew that that he was purged. We were just waiting to find out why. And sure enough, interesting timing, and I'm sure there's going to be more to the story, that the Wall Street Journal broke this story that basically, I mean, the main part of it is he didn't think the actions Hegseth was ordering were legal. Um, that means that he must have, been involved or at least known of the September 2nd strike and knew that that was a war crime. And on top of who knows what else. I mean, frankly, would love to be a fly on the wall in the Pentagon to hear the discussions because God knows what else they're planning. I mean, we know they want to overthrow Maduro. We know they want to seize the oil fields, or at least that's my assumption.
Yeah.
Uh, so, we don't know what other illegalities they're carrying out. We do see these strikes and frankly extrajudicial killings in, anywhere are not legal. Um attempting to kill someone and then they happen to survive and are trying to, cling for their life and then to kill them. This is what Russia does. So this is the double tap that really Russia's known for, and we've entered that territory. But it's interesting that Wall Street Journal came out with this reporting specifically now. So I think there will probably be more to this story coming out of, why they chose to come out when everything about this double tap strike and the potential war crime or murder, depending, you know, whether we're in war or we're not in war. What more he knew about and what more was done.
Yeah, we'll talk to Professor Terence Goggin, who's got some really good insights into all of this. Of course, he's the West Point professor, and he has a long history of understanding exactly what the historical norms are and what is being broken and what's also going on right now inside the military and where the commanders are, which is not really behind Donald Trump or the Secretary of Defense right now. A leaked Der Spiegel summary of a call between European leaders shows Macron warning Zelensky that the US may betray Ukraine on territory. Germany's Friedrich Merz and Finland's Alexander Stubb urged caution about Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, negotiating directly with Putin. Even NATO chief Mark Rutte reportedly agreed Ukraine must be protected, underscoring deep mistrust of Washington's back-channel diplomacy. So Macron has this tape, it's been leaked, telling Zelensky, don't trust the United States, don't trust Trump. We know that. Zelensky must know that too.
This is the biggest story right now. If you go on X, like this is like at least from in my algorithm, this is the biggest story. And I'm sitting there and scratching my head, and I'm like, "Huh, Macron like came out of a coma. Is this what happened?" Because I mean, surely he knows you can't trust the United States. Surely he knows we can invade Greenland at any moment. Forget even protecting Ukraine. We may, assist, send military to fight alongside the Russians and, assisting them in genocide in Ukraine. But the fact that the call came out is very interesting because clearly the Europeans wanted to know, wanted Americans to know this is what is happening. And that big distrust and the rift that's happening in the in the transatlantic. It's quite fascinating what is happening because we've seen all these, between UK withholding intelligence, between Netherlands withholding intelligence from US. Now you have our European, allies who are the closest allies that we used to have, our traditional allies, now worried that the White House is basically messengers for the Kremlin and working on behalf of the Kremlin, which is exactly what has been happening. Happy that they came out
Yeah.
11 months later, but this is what's happening. So
It doesn't sound like
inter-
that's a real leak. I mean, it sounds like they leaked it themselves to Der Spiegel. It doesn't sound it's one of those things that someone else leaked to them. It's a clear message to the United States. Finally, on the tracker today, the New York Republican Club is set to honor Markus Freundmeier, a senior figure in Germany's far-right AfD, at its December 13 gala, just weeks after the state Young Republicans were dissolved over group chats praising Hitler. The club has echoed AfD rhetoric, posting AfD über alles and hosting events where members sang Nazi-associated lines. U.S. conservatives like Rubio, Vance, and Musk increasingly embrace this extremist party. This is a big deal.
Yeah, it was interesting to know the Young Republicans Club still exist. I thought that
I thought they
they went,
disbanded. Yeah.
yeah, after the Nazi messages that came out. I mean, and the racist messages, and I mean, those messages were vile. But yeah, it's troubling to say the least that you have AFD members. I mean, first of all, Musk supports them. He supports the party. He's held events with them. You have Trump and Vance who support this party, and AFD is tied to, I mean, it has a lot of neo-Nazi ideology. It's has a lot of Russian espionage and a lot of Russian money flowing through the party to support it. They have Russian agents embedded in the party. One, her name is Olga, also,
Really?
um, who fled last year back to Russia. She was the deputy of AFD in Hamburg, I believe. And as German intelligence were closing in on her, I guess she got nervous, took her kids, fled back to Russia. And that's it. So that just shows you, what kind of AFD party this is.
Yeah, you've really
And
been connecting the dots here between the Russian, the Kremlin and all these right-wing extremist parties. There's such a connection there, and you
oh,
can certainly
huge.
see it as well with Musk and others supporting this extremist party. Um, Great work, by the way, on all your extremist Russian connection content. Is there anything on Unmasking Russia or Trump Tyranny Tracker that you want to share with everybody right now as you're continuing to post some incredible work?
The new chapter came out, basically, how you call it, showing how Russia began laying the groundwork, to target parties like the AFD and the, how you call it, Forum for Democracy in Netherlands and various other parties. So check out the new chapter.
Oh, good timing. Look who's just dropped in. The West Point professor himself, Terence Goggin, is here. Terence, meet Olga Lautman from the Trump Tyranny Tracker and Unmasking Russia. And Olga, meet Terence.
Hi.
Hello there. Good to see you.
I think you
Nice.
have to move yourself into the little unshaded area because others are only going to see half of your handsome face there.
I see this
So,
much.
even more to your left, I think, Professor, if you could, because we were only seeing
Part of my
the.
left.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Now we see you. Thanks.
Is that
That's so
better?
much better. Anyway, I'm glad you guys got to meet. Olga's got to go because she's already telling me that she's got to catch up on some things. So I'll let you go, Olga. But it's great to see you, and we'll see you next Tuesday. But it's your birthday. We won't see you next Tuesday.
No, next week I am not here. So next week, no
So
Tracker
happy
Live. No.
birthday
Thank you.
in advance, and I'm sure we'll find a way to celebrate when you return, or we'll send you a great birthday greeting on the day.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Bye.
Nice to meet
Bye.
you too.
Bye.
She's great. She's been researching this incredible amount of research for the last decade, almost longer, 2 decades, maybe even longer. I'm not even sure, but a long time. Everything to do with Russia's involvement in Ukraine and a whole bunch of other things. I'm trying to remove her from the screen here, but there she is. Okay. Um, Everyone knows the West Point professor, the West Point history professor, because he is super smart about all things military. And Terence, I'm struck today by the confluence of events that have happened to poor Pete Hegseth and his attempt to be a Secretary of Defense. I mean, we really have seen three significant developments all in a single day, which really indicate that not only is he potentially on his way out, but that he's lost the support of the commanders, he's lost the support of the Republican Party, or at least the senators and the House representatives, and he's potentially on his way to having committed a war crime, could be on his way to being, having to defend that war crime. And that's only the start of it. I mean, the first thing that happened this morning was Signalgate. And then, the report on Signalgate, this was the Pentagon's Inspector General report, an 84-page report that not only confirmed to us that Hegseth shared sensitive operational details about the Yemen airstrike, and we all remember that day. It was quite a huge scandal. But he not only shared it with everyone on Signal, he also shared it with his wife, his brother, his personal lawyer. And then this is just hours before the American pilots flew those missions, endangering their lives. That happened first this morning. Then Admiral Frank Bradley testified behind closed doors on Capitol Hill about the September the 2nd strike that killed survivors in the water. Rep. Jem Hines, who came out of that meeting, said that he had never seen anything quite like this in his entire history of being a public servant. And this was after everyone realizes he said, "Kill them all," about the two people holding onto their lives and clinging onto that boat in the middle of the Caribbean. And then came the Wall Street Journal confirmation that we were just talking about earlier on, that Admiral Alvin Halsey, the 4-star commander of Southern Command, he didn't retire voluntarily, according to the Wall Street Journal. Hegseth pushed him out. And apparently the quote, which I'm just stunned by, is you're either on the team or you're not. When you get an order, you move out fast and you don't ask questions. This is what Hegseth told the commander, Alvin Halsey, the Admiral Alvin Halsey, the 4-star commander of Southern Command. I mean, from your perspective, as you look at not this whole day, but let's start even with just that little segment there. Have you ever imagined a Secretary of Defense talking to an admiral in that way?
Well, I've written numbers of posts about Hegseth, about Signalgate, about his interaction with Admiral Halsey, who's a very honorable man. I have my doubts a little bit about the current situation with regard to the killing of the two survivors, both survivors. That's actually goes against 1,000, maybe 2,000 years of tradition of rescuing sailors along your opponents from the sea if they've been abandoned by their patriots and they cannot be rescued by their own people. Then you rescue them. That's been going on for
So
over
the
1,000
tradition,
years.
just to underline that, the tradition is to rescue people in distress. The tradition is not to blow them out of the water and out of existence.
No, no, no. It's a very, very long tradition. Now,
Mm.
it was somewhat changed during World War I and II because of the event of submarines. And the ship captains were always concerned that if they began to rescue the crews of sunken ships, that they would be attacked by a submarine. It was sort of a trap. However, they normally went ahead unless they had a sighting of a periscope or something else. There was an incident, a very famous incident during World War II, when the battleship Bismarck, which had been sought by the British to sink because they were very concerned it was actually the largest battleship, most powerful battleship in the world at the time, and they cornered it about 700 miles off of the French coast and sunk it. And the most of the crew was able to escape, and they began to rescue the crew. And then a sighting was made of a periscope, and very reluctantly, the admiral of the fleet there said we must leave because there are possibilities of being attacked by submarines. Now that's pretty heartless and pretty tough for them to do, and even the British felt it was difficult to make that decision. But it was only made because they could have been sunk themselves. So you don't just let people die at sea unless there's a real danger that you yourself are going to be killed. Well, this obviously doesn't apply to this situation.
Never
So I
mind,
think
died at sea. They killed him at sea. I mean, this is a whole different set of circumstances.
yeah. First of all, the fact that they've been blown up and then they were just floating on the water means that they were probably going to die anyway, unless they were rescued by their friends. But who's going to go near them after they've been blown out of the water? Nobody's going to go near them. Nobody's going to go rescue them. Nobody's going to do anything aggressive about the situation on their side. We were obligated to, frankly, we were by norms and by the law to rescue them if we could. And in fact, that policy was later situation occur. The United States rescued them. I think what happened here, and I'm reading between the lines, but I think that the testimony before the Senate committees, when it occurs, actual public testimony, and perhaps investigations and so forth will reveal that Hegseth ordered everybody to be killed. I can't see any reason why any of the uniformed personnel would have ordered everybody killed. And that was probably an emotional response. He's a very irresponsible person, totally incompetent for this job. And that's my educated guess.
I think it's a very smart, educated guess, and it seems to be what they're saying when they're coming out of those meetings where they're not only talking to Bradley, but they're also watching the video. Clearly, that video is showing them that Hegseth ordered this, and he ordered it in a very aggressive way. Now, it also fits in with his sort of warrior code or whatever it is that he was pulling or pushing a few weeks ago when he met with all the generals. I mean, he sort of has this idea of the military as something which would be an anathema to most Americans, really, when you think about what he thinks the American military should be doing. Never mind going to war in Venezuela. I mean, this is not.
He's not a military man. He was in the service for a few years as a very junior officer. He came in as a lieutenant. I guess he was in Iraq, and he lost his head a few times in Iraq, according to reports. He was a very emotional person, and in combat, gets a lot of stress, a lot of pressure in combat. So if you don't really have a cool head, you're going to get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And he got in trouble, in fact, and he got in a big fight with the lawyers. The way his forces conducted themselves, his platoon, his company. So he has a bad track record in the military, but that was several decades ago. He's only gotten this kind of position where he's the equivalent of a 5-star general. He orders 4 stars around,
Mm-hmm.
and he's probably the worst Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense in 250 years. So I hate to have him be an example of the military. He's just not. He doesn't have any kind of relationship to the professional military. He was
No.
a TV performer.
Yeah, TV
That's
anchor.
his real job. Yeah.
Not even a TV anchor. Performer is a better word for it. Someone's asking on the chat here, what about the admiral? Why wasn't he resisting the commands of Hegseth? And we don't know that he wasn't, by the way. We have no clue what his response was at the time. But, nevertheless, it seems that he did order the strike to happen. As you might, I guess, under that kind of condition, or should he have stood up to the secretary?
Yes, he should have. On the other hand, he's a human being, and he's sitting there with 4 stars on his shoulder. He had been recently promoted to that job. And that job, by the way, was a supervisorial job in charge of all of the joint operations, special operations, and the entire military, Air Force, Navy, and Army. Before, he was just in charge of special operations in the Navy, particularly in the Caribbean. And he was a 3-star. So when that occurred, he was a 3-star general.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his promotion was probably pending. So there's a lot of personal pressure on him to follow the orders of the secretary, who is going to decide whether he's promoted or not to the job that is pending. So he's probably put under a lot of personal pressure. Could he have just fallen on the sword and say, "No, sir, I'm not going to do that"? Hegseth would have found somebody to order that, or he would have personally ordered it. So it wouldn't have changed the facts. So you can't expect professional military men to refuse orders that in the situation are not what I would say blatantly unconstitutional and threaten the republic. Refusing an order in that situation, a combat situation, is very, very difficult. The Caine Mutiny Court Martial, by the way, which is a play that was made into a movie with starring Humphrey Bogart,
Mm-hmm.
shows the drama of an irrational commander putting his ship in danger, and what the officers' options are. Are they going to, in effect, seize control of the vessel from the captain and confine him to quarters, which is what happened in the play? Or are they going to do something else which would more or less quiet the situation down, talk him into going to his quarters? Sir, we can take care of this, don't worry about it, that sort of thing. And that's the tension. Talking
Right.
the irrational commander out of an irrational command is preferable to just blatantly refusing the order, or to, in that case, seizing control of the ship.
That's interesting. What's the name of the movie? What's the name of the movie?
The movie is called The Caine Mutiny.
Okay, The Caine Mutiny.
The Caine Mutiny, the 3 words, starred Humphrey Bogart and an all-star cast. Mel Ferrer played a key role as the defense counsel for the officers who were charged with mutiny, and he did a very good job and destroyed the captain on the stand, proving that he was irrational.
Right. I'm curious.
By the way, let me just say one other thing.
Sure.
He came down against the officers later on in the play by saying, "You caused this to happen. You should have been much more supportive of your superior officer, and I would have much preferred to prosecute you than to have defended you." And that's the moral of that story, is that it's a very difficult place to be. And the officers chose a very serious course to in effect just mutiny against the captain. Try everything else before you do that. How does that translate to this situation? We don't know the conversations that took place. They will come out, I'm sure, in testimony. There were a lot of witnesses to what happened. So we will know what Hegseth said. We'll know what the admiral said. And we can make a judgment when we know what the facts are. But he was put in an almost impossible situation by Hegseth. The real culprit here is not Hegseth even. It's the president of the United States, Donald Trump. He is the one who put all of these people in this situation by an illegal order, or by an illegal war. It's not a legal war at all. It hasn't been declared. It's completely off the charts as being illegal.
Yeah.
It's a performance operation. There's no legitimate end.
Now, Admiral Bradley did say today that there was a kill them all order, right? We know that, and we also know that there was also a claim by either, I think it might have been the secretary himself, who said that they were still in the fight because they had radio contact with another vessel. So I don't know if that's Bradley saying what happened or whether it's coming from Hegseth, but there's someone on that side of things saying, we had to do what we did because they were still in the fight because they had radio contact with another vessel. Now, of course, that's not really any danger to any American. I mean, what kind of fight are they having if they're, shooting people out from the sky? I mean, it's really not a fair fight at the end of the day.
It's a stupid comment. That's all I can say about it. That's just absurd. And they weren't in the fight. And even if they were in the fight, what were they going to be fighting with? A radio is not a weapon.
Right.
And the whole thought is just political cover. And I noticed that Senator Cotton came out, and he's on the extreme right wing of the Republican Party, and he came out in full-throated defense of Hegseth, which is really pretty much just right-wing propaganda.
Yeah.
They'll find out what happened, and it probably will be in a public hearing. It may happen under the Republicans. It may happen under the Democrats. I'm sure it will happen under Chairman Reed, who I know. He's a former West Point cadet in my era, and my partner in the seminar at West Point, and I taught a group, and he was in that group that was being taught by us. He's a very sharp guy and a very.
Who's this? Sorry, who was this you were talking to about?
This is Senator Reed.
Okay, Senator Reed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The ranking member of the of the
Armed Services Committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
It did seem like Democrats really were appalled by everything that they'd seen. I want to ask you about Halsey. This incredible, we had been hearing up until now that this was a retirement, a resignation, but there were rumors around why he did it. But now it seems that Hegseth really turfed him out, and he said, "You're either on the team or you're not. When you get an order, you move out fast and you don't ask questions." So to say that to the admiral in command of your Southern Command is obviously, I mean, it doesn't happen. We've spoken about that. But is there more to come, do you think, from this conversation that's going to create a sense of who Hegseth really is for the public? And the timing is obviously not coincidental. These things don't happen just by accident at the same time. I mean, are we going to learn from now another commander that there was another issue with Hegseth that needs real addressing?
Yeah, he forced that Admiral Halsey out. I did a long post about
you did a great
situation.
One. That's good.
There's no question he refused to set up the system whereby they would be shooting and sinking boats, narco boats, because they weren't combatant boats. That was his position all along, the admiral's position. And so he was basically told to resign or he'd be fired. And they chose to resign because being fired would have consequences. It would have probably meant that he left at a lower rank with lower pensions and all this stuff. So he did the right thing from his career point of view by retiring. But he also did the right thing morally by refusing to order his troops to engage in an illegal activity.
Well, did Bradley take over? Is Bradley taking over Halsey's position? Is that the way it works, or is it a different?
No, it's the Halsey was the combatant commander for the Caribbean. It's called Southern Command.
Right.
And he covers all of the uh, various commands in that vicinity: Army, Navy, and Air Force. That's an administrative command, actually.
Okay.
Okay. The other admiral is in charge of special operations, which was the executing group that went after this particular boat,
Okay.
and he was an operational commander.
So they're not related to each other necessarily. But what's there's a theme here, obviously, that the secretary is demanding complete compliance from everybody, and he's not looking for any pushback. He's not tolerating any pushback. It's in line with what the president has been telling everyone as well, that he wants complete compliance and loyalty. Goes back to the Jim Comey conversation years ago, that this is what he's seeking. This is all utterly un-American. It's certainly unlike the American military. It's not something that can be understood within the context of our Constitution. Is the military, I heard Warner say this.
It's totally unprofessional. This isn't just it's not the way military officers talk to each other, whether they're superiors or inferiors. There's a lot of conversation back and forth about planning operations, should we do, what is proper, what is improper, and there will be disagreements, but you will have conferences about them. You read any of the histories of military history, you'll find them always talking frankly with each other, and there will be disagreement. And at the end of the day, the commander will have taken all of these things into account and will say, okay, gentlemen, this is my decision. And he gives his decision, and they all salute. Yes, sir, we're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it normally happens.
I mean, it's obviously not the demands that Hegseth and Trump are making. I saw Senator Warner on morning TV yesterday saying something that I couldn't believe my ears. I had to go back and listen to it again. This is the ranking member on the on the Senate Intelligence Committee. This is someone who represents Virginia. He's connected to the military in a very close way, and he said maybe the military will save us from Trump. And I was like stunned by that phrase, because it's him saying it. It's not just anybody saying it. Is that what's really happening here? Is the military saving America from Trump?
That's a good question. And I've written a number of posts on that subject. Yes, the military is standing by the Republic. It is not standing by Trump. If Trump challenges the Republic, they've demonstrated time and again in the last several years in obvious ways and some very subtle ways that they're standing with the Constitution. It started on January 6th when General Milley, over the objections of the Secretary of Defense and the silence of President Trump, sent the National Guards in to save the Congress, to save the Speaker and the Vice President from being killed, literally. With thousands of National Guard troops who are armed with automatic weapons. And it was only by them joining hands, maybe several hundred, maybe more, joining hands and moving through every room in the Capitol against the mob. And when the mob saw them moving with lots of armed weapons, they moved. They didn't contest the troops, and they quietly got them all out of the Capitol. That was what was required. The cops couldn't control that mob, but armed soldiers have a very different approach and very different vision. When they go into a situation with a mob, they are prepared to use their weapons if the mob doesn't retreat. Now, the police sometimes do and sometimes don't, but there's no doubt that the soldiers would have used them.
So interesting. We talk about Nick Parrow. He met last time on the show. I asked him to join us, but he couldn't make it tonight. Sent me an article that he wrote about the law of war, about how these things are colliding. We've got U.S. policy not really fitting in with the law of war. How we are essentially not treating our wounded victims like we should be treating them. And he thinks that this is going to be a huge issue going forward. Our international reputation as how we're handling victims of war or people wounded at war is a major significant issue. We really are, if this is what we're doing to them, killing them, blowing them out of existence, how will anyone trust us? How will anyone work with us? How will anyone work with this American military going forward?
Well, this is an historic exception to the way we've conducted ourselves. The military has traditionally taken good care of their prisoners of war, which is what you're referring to. Wounded prisoners have traditionally been well taken care of by the American military, going back to the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and certainly the modern wars. We always took care of our prisoners. Why? Because we wanted our men to be taken care of too.
Right.
That's the tragedy of the whole situation. You've got prisoners of war, but you have your own troops on the other side in a similar situation. And Germany had a very strong tradition in the First World War of taking care of prisoners of war, giving them good medical care. In the Second World War, it was a little bit different. They had certain camps, I understand, were much more cruel and uncaring, whereas others were very accepting and very tolerant and very trying to work with the prisoners to keep everything calm and to give them good medical care. Mostly the Luftwaffe took really good care of our pilots and the British pilots too.
Right. And that's why you do it. You do it for that reason. That's the reason you'd want to do that.
Right. But some of the other camps that were controlled by the SS troops, the Waffen SS, was the army version of the SS, and they were really kind of emotional nutcases, and they just were very cruel and mean people, and they did not take good care of the troops, of their prisoners.
That's interesting. It's interesting, and of course, that's a choice America's military has to make under Trump. I mean, it's we're not just changing policy, we're not just changing our alliances, we're also changing who we are as people. If Trump continues down this path, it means a very different trajectory for the American people, and also for our view on human rights and war in general. And this is not just we're not just dealing with one guy we're dealing with our future here. I know you call it an aberration. You call it something that, is going to be removed at the end of the day. But, there is there's some chance that that's not going to happen, that he still prevails, that he does, fulfill his whatever dream it is. What happens then? I mean, we all are hoping the military is going to be there. We're all hoping the military stands up and the Republicans look like they're doing the right things in Congress. But there's no guarantee of that. What's the safeguard if it all goes wrong and he does absolutely continue his mission here and removes all the legal commanders that are there now in the army and replaces them with people who are just yes men?
Well, first of all, there's something called the long gray line. The long gray line is all of the people who have graduated from the military academies going back a couple of 100 years. And the idea is that, you can take 1 or 2 of us out, or maybe a whole score of us out, but there's still a whole bunch of guys back of me who are going to step up and fight to maintain the republic. The republic exists, and then the republic, through Congress, created the military to defend the republic. And that's their vision of their job. Their job is to defend the republic, not the president, but the republic itself. And their principal loyalty is actually historically been to the Congress, because the Congress created the army, the Congress declares war, and the Congress finances the army. The president is really just an operational officer. So their loyalty is very strong to the Congress, which represents the republic in their minds. Now, what's the ultimate defense against all of this stuff that Trump's doing? Well, let's call it an election. That's what the ultimate defense is. And we're about to have an election.
We are.
In which I'm writing a post about this right now. The Republicans are going to be devastated by what I call a tsunami blue wave.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
Well, with they're going to lose a lot of seats, 50 seats in the House, and maybe up to 9 seats in the Senate. I've done the
Wow.
math on it, and I'm putting that out soon. It's a complicated piece. Anyway,
9 seats in the Senate. That's an interesting number. You're taking us to what, 58 then for the Democrats? Is that what you're
well,
suggesting?
we're currently at 48, so 9 would put us at 57.
57.
And you're only let's see, you're 10 votes away from being able to have a 2/3 vote in the Senate to impeach.
You and I are on the same track, sir. We're both thinking about what happens when we get to 67 senators who are, not in support of Donald Trump or his administration. You get to impeachment and conviction pretty quickly.
Well, and there's also a discipline about having an election. The other party that loses the election is chastised seriously, and they may change their mind about what is the best thing for even their own careers and how they should vote. And see, if they impeach Trump, it doesn't mean the Republican administration is gone. It means Trump's gone. If they want to impeach the administration, then they would impeach not only Trump, but the vice president. And then the vice president, the next person in line, is the Speaker of the House, whoever that might be. Now, the Speaker of the House is not necessarily a member of the House. It can be anybody. So there could be a bipartisan agreement that the Speaker of the House, who would become president in the event of an impeachment and conviction in the Senate, would be some sort of bipartisan figure that would just serve out the balance of the term. One example would be Mitt Romney or somebody similar of that both sides.
Yeah, I wrote about this a few weeks ago as well. That this is the presidential election. We should be thinking of this as a presidential election, and we should even be thinking about who our ideal presidential compromise candidate for the Speaker of the House is. If we don't want someone on the extremes of either parties, who is it going to be that's going to be unifying as a figure? And it could be anybody. It could be really, and it could also be, by the way, people like Barack Obama. I don't know, he probably might not fit the right mold for everybody, but there are some really impressive statespeople in America that could fit that role quite well. People have mentioned Cheney, the young Cheney. Sure, she doesn't think of herself as that, but Liz Cheney is a possibility. That's another one that's been floated around. You mentioned Romney. There's some good names out there that could steer the ship for a little bit and clean house.
Yeah, and the fact is that Gerald Ford, who became president by appointment, because he was appointed vice president with the approval of the Congress, because the vice presidency in that era was vacated by Vice President Agnew left, and so Nixon tried to get the governor of Texas, Connolly, appointed vice president, and he was turned down by the Democrats in the House, and they needed the Democratic votes in the House to approve Ford to be vice president. Well, he had a bipartisan support for that job. They would not approve Connolly under any circumstances. So, in effect, the picking of the vice president was similar to the situation we would have here, where both Vance and Trump were kicked out. Then they would have a pause and maybe a brief pause, and then they would vote in a new speaker who would be their selection for president, because he would automatically become president because he was speaker. And then it would go back to some sort of a normal way of operating the government. And whoever was picked for that job would then be a caretaker, more or less, until the next presidential election.
Could win that next election. That's why those people who are thinking that they're going to wait until 28 to announce their presidency runs should be thinking about this next year as the time to do it, because Gavin Newsom, for example, should be out there trying to build this coalition in the middle. If I were advising him, I'd say build that coalition right now, so people know what they're voting for come next November. And maybe a vote for the Republicans, or some Republicans, is a vote against the president as well. It doesn't have to all be split along party lines.
Well, I think there are a lot of conversations behind the scenes between Republicans and Democrats that are rational people on what are we going to do once the election is over with, depending upon the damage that has been done to the Republican Party and the state that they're in, I think they will be open to some sort of bipartisan effort to run the country in a reasonable fashion. But it would involve getting impeaching not only Trump but Vance. Vance is not anybody who would change anything. May probably make things worse. So I think that that's a very logical point that you're making. I would totally agree with that.
Well, Professor Terence Goggin, it's great to have this conversation. I always love talking to you. You bring so much context into everything that you talk about. The West Point History Professor is absolutely one of the best Substacks out there. It's a must-read. The professor takes his very good time to write the most complex, interesting articles about all sorts of things related to history and military. What do you have going on right now on your Substack?
Well, I'm writing this post about the impact of the Tennessee District 7 election, where the incumbent, or I should say the Republican incumbent party, but the Republican won by less than 5 points. Where
Maybe
Trump
not even one. We
district.
don't sure. If you saw earlier on, we had our show with one of the This Will Hold people from the This Will Hold blog, and they have a good argument to make that may have been an unusual election because they found 31,000 votes that shouldn't have been there, statistically at least.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that
so
one.
it may not even be that he won, but it was close. It was closer than anyone had imagined.
Let's put that aside because he got sworn in. But
Yeah.
the point is that they ran minus 13 points. In other words, from their baseline, the Republicans are 13 points down. The Democrats are plus 13 from their baseline. The baseline is what you would expect the party to get based upon their average in the elections in 2020 and 2024. So if you take that as your baseline, then what is the vote that they should have gotten? And then if they didn't achieve that, how far away from that did they get? And the Republicans are running minus 13, minus 14 right now. That's not just in Tennessee, but in all of the previous elections, Virginia, New Jersey, the courts, there were 3 or 4 court elections and other special elections that have occurred over the last year. They're running on an average underwater by 10 to 14 points.
Wow.
If that happens in this coming November, if that happens, how many seats would the Democrats gain? And that's what I'm writing right now. Also, how many seats in the Senate would they gain? And I haven't finished it yet.
I think it's more than 50 in the House. Actually, would be my guess. I think the Senate.
Well, it's actually gonna. It looks like the statistics are gonna end up being around 37 seats.
Okay.
If that would be a relatively hard number. It could be better than that or worse than that, but that's the best number that you can take to the bank. I think that's what I'm saying is most probably going to happen is 37 new seats in the House and somewhere between 4 and 9 seats in the Senate.
Oh, but that would be a whitewash.
But the most important thing is it changes the complexion of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party now has a whole bunch of new leaders who are representing more or less the center of the country. In this situation, hypothetical situation, the West, the Rocky Mountain states become a bedrock of Democratic support, interestingly enough, as well as parts of the Midwest and even picking up some southern seats and possibly Texas. So if that happens, then the Democratic Party going into the 2028 election has a much different leadership core than they do today. They have a Texas senator, for example. He immediately would become a presidential potential because he's the newly elected senator from Texas, and the Democrats would say, gee, let's take a look at him. And
you're not saying Federico is likely to be the next president of the United States, are you?
No, there are a lot of different candidates down there. I don't know who would win the Texas primary.
I'm just pushing you a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not going to take any position on
Yeah.
the presidential election yet. But the important thing is that the complexion of the party, instead of being viewed as some sort of left wing party, which it is right now by a number of people in the South and Midwest, who may be reluctant to vote for the Democratic presidential candidate in 2028 because, for example, Gavin Newsom's coming from wild ass California, and they wouldn't want to support him. But gee, if we nominated a Texas senator, or a governor from another Midwestern state like Kentucky, which currently has a Democratic governor, then we would have a different kind of election prospect, and we would have a much bigger chance of getting a unified, not only just a unified strong party, but a unified country. I mean, this is all about the country. I mean, we are, as Lincoln said, we're friends, not enemies.
Yeah,
And let's
absolutely.
try to live together.
That's a great way to end the show. I learned so much from you today. Thank you so much, Professor. I really appreciate you being here. Everyone should please subscribe to the Professor's great Substack, and also become a paid subscriber. He puts in many, many hours and years of experience and study in every one of his posts. So he certainly deserves a paid subscription. I highly recommend it. I get a lot of great knowledge out of there. And I thank you very much, Terence Goggin, for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.